every physical product that you see has a supply chain behind it. There's a huge opportunity, particularly in that workflow across different workflows within the supply chain, and have a very strong use case for artificial intelligence. And the data that is very, very critical for you to stay on top of, it's usually over email and over WhatsApp, and Excel spreadsheets, and then PDFs. And that's really where we came in, where we built a tool a little bit like a ghost in the background.
What it's giving is this ability to just communicate better.
What is it actually that the AI is doing? And what are we trying to achieve here with that technology?
Hey Cedrik, how's it going?
Very good. Excited. It's a Friday and ready for the weekend.
I'll have to edit during the weekend, but it's good that the weekend's here. So we recently just met. We had a really cool conversation the other day, and I, to be honest, kind of came into it with this weird tiny little voice asking me skeptically, wait a minute, how are you going to turn supply chain into something exciting? I mean, what is exciting about that, and how can the audience kind of take stuff from that? And to your credit, you made it exciting. Yeah. So I came out of that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was just actually a really fun conversation. The question is, why, how did you get there? Why AI? Why supply chain?
It's a very broad question. I think first, starting with why are supply chains exciting? I think there are really two parts here that we can mention. I think the very first thing is, and I often tell this to candidates when we hire them, and particularly when they're coming out of the not from the supply chain space, but maybe from the tech side and all of that. If you look around you, every physical product that you see has a supply chain behind it. So there's this process of factories that produce raw materials, and these raw materials then go to another factory, and it needs to be refined, and it needs to be transported all the way from different countries in the world in container ships to a warehouse up until you can actually buy the product. So even as a consumer, you might just see the final product. There's actually a whole process behind it with many, many different people and many different stakeholders that are involved in making this a reality. And I think that this is super, super exciting. The other thing that is very exciting about supply chains, because of that process, and I guess it's more from a technical angle, because it's such a fragmented process, there's a lot of data. And there's a lot of systems that are flying around, a lot of terminologies. And I think that, talking about AI in a second, there's a huge opportunity, particularly in that workflow across different workflows within the supply chain, where you can make use and have a very strong use case for artificial intelligence. I think, to give a little bit of a background of myself, I'm from Germany originally, and I actually started my career in investment banking. It was absolutely not my cup of tea. And at 23, I quit investment banking, moved to Taiwan, to the other end of the world, and ended up buying a manufacturing company. So I went first, head first into the supply chain, managing a manufacturer, internationalized this manufacturer up until COVID hit. After COVID, I went on to Mexico to co-found an e-commerce holding where we bought up more than 25 different brands that were selling on Amazon and Mercado Libre, so different e-commerce marketplaces. Also, there was the director of supply chain. We scaled to 200 employees in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. And in that process of actually being a supply chain operator, I became so frustrated, not with the actual work and the work that you need to do or the strategic work, but actually with the technology and the systems we've encountered and the lacking visibility with regards to data that we've had. And I think this was really one of these fundamental points where I was thinking about, okay, what is it that we can do to actually build and leverage AI technologies to make this process better, particularly on the data side, and make this data available to different operators. And that's also what Ameba is about. In supply chains, what you have is you have folks that are buying teams or sourcing teams. And these are the folks that interact with all of their suppliers around the world. So let's say you're a fashion brand and you're based in the UK, in London. And you have manufacturers that sit in China and in Bangladesh and in Vietnam. And now you need to interact with these suppliers on a constant basis and send them orders and say, okay, we want that you manufacture 100 black shirts for us. And then you need to track that production. And these suppliers, they work with you, but they're not part of your organization. So you kind of need to manage somebody externally. And how this happens, it's usually over email and over WhatsApp and over WeChat and over all these different communication channels. And the data that is very, very critical for you to stay on top of as a sourcing officer or the sourcing person, this data is then being written in email threads and in Excel spreadsheets and in PDFs. And is being sent to you via all these different channels. So it's really, really difficult to stay on top of that. And that's really where we came in, where we built a tool effectively thinking about it a little bit like a ghost in the background, where you can connect your email to our platform, and instantly we start capturing all these different information out of all these different communication channels, unstructured data, structuring the data, so make it then available to the user that you can make the right decisions based on this data foundation that is currently not available to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since I've talked to you last and I've obviously gotten to know a bit more about Ameba, a big part of what your tool that's got the artificial intelligence there, what it's giving is this ability to just communicate better. It's, I remember working as a business development manager in a high-tech company. We were manufacturing or producing a machine that went to textile factories. Complicated, a lot of parts. And I just remember the operations team always being stressed. And also it affected us. So we had a situation where we had to deliver a machine that was sitting after an exhibition in Europe and had to be moved to Turkey. But some things started going wrong because you have to deal with, how do you move a machine that's in Italy through customs in Italy to Turkey. There's a lot of things that happen, a lot of communications between different people. And I think there were at least 6, 7, 8 people talking about it, right? And it took so many conversations. So the thing that actually, when I looked at Ameba and what it does, I just looked back and I said, so basically, it just simplifies the communication. It just makes also us less stressed about these things. That was my take, ultimately, of what the kind of main thing that you deliver through your tool, your platform. So,
I think you're absolutely right. So when you think about supply chain management, it's effectively project management, and it's project management for each individual component or product that you have within your supply chain. And what does it mean? It's similar to any other project. There's a lot of back and forth that is being communicated, and what is being communicated is data. It's data points such as, again, when does the production start? When are you going to be ready with that? What's the quality of a certain item? Because you constantly need to flag these different issues that are popping up along your value or your supply chain to then the next person to make the right decision of how can we get these products as fast as possible or at the right time, at the right quality, at the right cost into the warehouse so that we can sell it to the consumer. And for me, the epiphany that I had in my own career is that very often the supply chain was viewed as, or the operation was viewed as, it just needs to work. We need to sell a lot, and then you kind of need to execute along your value chain and along your operation. However, in reality, what we are seeing right now is that there are a lot of companies that know what to sell. There is demand for their product, but they're unable to execute on it. They're unable to actually pull through the supply chain to make this happen. And suddenly your supply chain is not just this ugly duck that needs to be managed and this necessary evil, let's say, that you just need to do, but actually it's an enabler of your growth or a disabler of your growth if you don't manage it correctly. And this was something for me that became very, very, very exciting, where I realized, okay, it's not just that along the supply chain you just need to do these things in order for the company to sell the products that they want to sell, but actually if they're unable to get the right products in time, then the company has a huge problem. Because then you're losing revenue, and at worst you're actually going to go bankrupt. And that's something that we've seen, especially post-COVID or during COVID, with a lot of companies that have actually had huge issues with too much inventory, so overstock, that had huge financial losses. Revlon, the cosmetics company, went into bankruptcy, stating supply chain issues as one of the main causes. So suddenly you realize that the operation is so critical actually for the survival of a company. And this is something that I felt very excited about, which is also a huge responsibility to carry on the operation side.
But what was that spark of idea? Because obviously you've gone through these frustrations yourself, managing a factory and manufacturer and all that you've built. You didn't say, okay, let's create a new PLM, ERP system. You kind of thought differently about it. So what was that process like? How did you come up with that idea of creating a plug-and-play system that kind of sits on with the existing processes of a business that delivers that ability to communicate?
I think I've been very fortunate, and I think it's a very rare case to have a founder of a technology company that has previously done the job of the customers she or he is selling to. So I still remember there's a situation that are very clear in my mind at Valorio, my previous company, the e-commerce holding, where we've had a huge sourcing team and we had extremely talented people that were taking care of our sourcing and buying. And I walked into the office and we have this big boardroom, very similar to here. And the entire sourcing team is sitting in front of this huge Excel that is projected against the wall. And they're going through line by line by line to check, okay, where do we stand with this SKU? Where do we stand with that order? What's the next delay here? What's the updated quantities that the suppliers communicated? And they've done this day by day. And as I passed along this meeting room and I saw them all sitting there, I said, this cannot be right. I mean, we have such talented people. They should be out and about meeting new manufacturers, designing new products, developing new products, thinking about how can we optimize cost and streamline cost, and not following through this huge Excel. At the same time, we did have a supply chain tool in place. We had the ERP system, we had a supply chain tooling, a dedicated supply chain tooling software that was supposed to manage that. And I think this was this epiphany on my end where I said, okay, something doesn't work here. And as I investigated, first as the director of supply chain at the previous company, what I realized is it's not that the tool in theory works really well, it's that the tool in reality doesn't work well. Why? Because there's a lot of communication going back and forth over WeChat, WhatsApp, and email. And I've seen that my team needs to be very flexible and very agile. And I've realized that we cannot now change all our internal processes to accommodate this fabulous system that we've bought, because it would have meant such a huge operational transformation, and it would have been so disconnected to the operation that actually got us to the successful position where we were in the first place. That said, okay, it's not on purpose that the team is using Excel to track that. It's just that the existing systems don't really support the workflows that we have. And this then really gave the spike on a pure operation level to say, from my end, okay, what is it that we can do to actually leverage all that data that is sitting there? And is there a way that you can leverage that data and surface the data without having to enforce a behavioral change on your team, or a process change or workflow change, or change on your suppliers, where you say, okay, now you only need to communicate every detail through this dedicated platform, such as the PLM system, which the supplier in Vietnam will never do. Yeah. So I think this was really, really more from a pure problem perspective, how we started thinking about Ameba. And then I've been extremely fortunate and lucky to have met my co-founder, who was previously working at Palantir Technologies, and where he had exposure to, first of all, the problem solving, the product management, and the engineering to really come up with a first principle approach of, okay, how do we build technology based on actual problems, but also that he had exposure to AI and could actually bring an AI as a potential solution for that problem. More so that we now came in and said, oh, there's AI. Let's build something in AI, which I think is happening right now with a lot of startups. So it was very, very much based in the actual operation problems that I've encountered across my entire career.
Obviously, the timing is great. It's the right time because of OpenAI and all these companies, and the fact that you can API to whatever systems you are doing. Kind of leads me into something I was going to maybe leave to later, but I might as well kind of bring it up, is this... because you're starting out, or you're a young company and you're now presenting this new way of thinking, I'm coming across this roadblocks sometimes of skepticism about AI, and trying to convince that artificial intelligence, especially or currently generative AI, is an enabler. It's there to assist rather than just change everything. It's how do you educate on this new way of thinking? And that's why I think it's smart that you're just saying to them, look, I'm not changing anything, I'm just adding. But how are you dealing with this kind of hesitancy, let's call it, in the business world? Obviously, you're talking to different types of customers, so fashion, textiles, to manufacturers of different kinds, of brands of different kinds. So how do you also see different characters of businesses?
It is a big challenge. And I think it's not just a big challenge for us, but it's a big challenge for the entire industry and technology community to actually think about, okay, where do we put AI? And I think the very first thing that I start doing is, and that I think is very, very important for any company, startup, or be it a very large technology company that is now suddenly deploying AI solutions on top of their existing systems, It's actually to manage expectations and to be clear, okay, what is feasible and what can be done, what is not feasible and what cannot be done, because it's not the magic wand where suddenly there's AI and everything is going to work. It's not. But then also being clear about educating users on what is it actually that the AI is doing and what are we trying to achieve here with that technology. So on the expectation side, I think we are very, very clear to say we have fortunately identified a very strong use case. We've identified a use case where we have by now a lot of proof points and certainty that we can have a material impact without having to overpromise. So it's not that I go in and say, okay, once you use Ameba, you will have 0 delays. There will always be delays. But I can guarantee you that these delays will be surfaced much, much quicker via the AI that captures it automatically out of any email and automatically out of automated emails that you send to your suppliers, as opposed to you have a person that needs to sit there and every single day check his inbox and send follow-up messages manually to the suppliers and then take that data out, put it into Excel, share the Excel with somebody else. That's a very solid and very, very predictable use case. Now, there are some folks that I've been speaking to across different brands and different industries that are so skeptical about AI that they say, okay, we don't want to have any type of AI solution in our company because it's just over promising and it's just smokes. And then you also have some other folks that come in and are actually very open-minded and say, okay, let's try and see and discover how much the Ameba AI platform can actually help us today with what you're currently offering, but also how much can the AI that you're building and the platform that you're building learn from our processes and learn from our data to then provide even more valuable insights in the future. So it's also not a case of, hey, you want to hold off on this new technology trend and say, okay, I stay in the passive position, but actually being involved in that technological frontier and see, okay, what can it actually do for me and how can I turn this technology into a competitive advantage for myself on a pure operational level. And I think in order to, on a pure product side, to really mitigate a lot of this suspicion that you have with a lot of folks, what we have built and emphasized greatly is what we call AI explainability. So across Ameba, what you have is you have references to the emails, to the PDFs, to the Excels, to the data that generated a certain alert and generated a certain insight that the AI is going to provide. So as a user, you can always double check and backtrack. Why did the AI actually come up with that? More so that there's suddenly an alert and there's suddenly an insight and the AI says, oh, you should procure more, more of this particular products because copper prices are going to increase. Now you can actually investigate, okay, why did the AI make this comment or this alert? Why would I, where does it come from? Where's the source to that? And this is something where we've been building very, very diligently, because we think it's very important for the user to then be able to double check and also understand what the AI is doing and not just provide this black box of magic that is happening in the background.
I mean, for me, it's obvious, and that's but that's I guess that's why I'm feeling like, okay, these roadblocks and I've heard a lot of management saying, no, we're not putting AI. We're not interested in AI in our organizations. So, but for me, it's kind of obvious. Like, it's obvious what the benefits are going to be. Has it surprised you when you've implemented? Have you got any anecdotes or stories of like when you've implemented in a certain customer site in any efficiency gain or whatever it may be that you just thought, wow, isn't that amazing? Because we've implemented this technology, the stress levels have gone down or something like that in your customer sites.
It has absolutely. So one of our customers, a hard goods brand here in the UK, we checked in with them after they started using Ameba and kind of wanted to see, okay, how's it going and what's the impact that you're seeing. Not to put it into specific numbers, but they said roughly 25% of their work that they've previously really spent on manual data entry is gone. This means 25% is getting back into their hands to do actually tasks and doing actions that really create value for the company. May it be developing products, or may it be thinking about finding new suppliers and running more RFQs or requests for quotes and doing the actual task where you can add a lot of value. And to me, this was something that I really loved, because you can come in as a startup and throw in all these ROI metrics where I say, okay, we improve, your stockout levels, and we improve your on-time delivery, and you come up with all these different numbers. But when you actually talk to a user and you see their emotional reaction to say, hey, actually now I can do the job that I love doing, and not that I'm sitting here and, I become, an Excel monkey to just, type in data into an Excel sheet, but actually I can do what I'm supposed to for what I've been supposed to do, and why I've been hired in the first place. This is something that's very magical, I would say, because it really opens up then a new level of, okay, where can you drive value as a human, and what is the work that you want to automate, because in the end of the day, it's not work that you are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that this is then also the much more interesting conversation that I have with particular users and operators in the space. Because when you talk to C-level and you talk about ROI improvements or KPI improvements on-time delivery, they get very excited about this.
Yeah.
But when you talk to the actual users and say, look, there is a certain fear of automation, but actually what is being automated, it's the manual work, the manual data entry work that you hate, that you should not be doing, that you're not supposed to do. And it's not that now AI comes in and suddenly the whole supply chain runs by itself.
Yeah.
Now, this is not the case for every AI solution, but it's certainly the case for our AI solution that we're building, and where we've seen a lot of support, both from the decision makers, such as the C-level that gets very excited about, the KPI improvements, but most importantly also about the users and the operators and the people that say, oh, wow, suddenly, I can actually focus on what I love to be doing. And I think that this is really, it's a really great achievement as an entrepreneur and as a founder to see that.
Yeah, I mean, because while you're talking, I'm looking back again when I was at that high-tech company. So one of the things is we were developing a technology, had developed a technology that digitally dyes yarn in thread. One of our investors and customers, the big customer, was Coats, the biggest sewing thread supplier in the world. And so we were partners with them because they were investors, but also customers, and we were developing this collaboration. And I remember receiving sample yarn, a sample thread, I should say, not yarn. Each one had its code. And thread can come in all sorts of ways. So you can have recycled polyester. You can have clean, just normal polyester. You've got different thicknesses and all that. So each one with its own SKU. So I remember receiving boxes of it because my counterpart had sent me samples. And the guy in operations who's dealing with the inventory and the stock didn't receive items properly in the customs note. I had different list. The supplier had got his list, and he was like really frustrated with me in the sense that he had to now deal with this and put it into stock and all that communication. And then I would send an email. It's like, what is this particular code? And I'm just thinking, my God, we could have had some kind of an artificial intelligence there that had it got proper data in there, which is the supplier's data of what every item is with normal English. First of all, I wouldn't have had a conversation with this guy, our operations guy, Mike, he's called. I wouldn't have had to go to his office. He would have said, hey, the threads arrived. I've logged it in. We just need to put it in inventory. Like you mentioned, C-level, upper management. I used to go into sales pitches selling these machines and trying to convince them and make them realize that what I'm trying to save them also is hidden costs. And for some reason, that didn't compute. It doesn't compute with a lot of upper management. Even here, I would assume that they're not aware of these situations, these wastes of time of someone like me who is senior management, going into an operations office, spending time in this communication. I had to then go into an Excel and log in and say what's what and double check that the inventory is done right so that poor Mike doesn't have to do it himself. And then the applications manager needed to know about it. So there was a whole host of people who had to know what this is, because then I had to pass it on to her to do the tests on, and she had to then communicate it to her engineer to do there were more people who had to know what this Excel was. So this, and upper management don't see that. They don't feel it. So it's the thing is, how do you bridge that? That's the point at which.
Absolutely. And I think that hence we've seen the biggest success to date, I would say, with mid-market firms that have somebody at the upper management level that is well aware and still close enough to the operation in order to actually be able to assess all these challenges that are going on. I think the other point that you just mentioned, and this is something that I find extremely interesting, is it's not so much just about the data that you collect for the individual user or for the team, but also the data that you can then suddenly make available to the rest of the company and all the adjacent areas that actually really care about this, what we call data foundation or real-time data foundation for all the physical goods that you have within your company. Because whether you're a fashion brand or a distributor or a retail company, your business is buying and selling a physical good. And knowing exactly where and how much and at which price these goods are, it's very relevant, not just for yourself as a sourcing and procurement manager or merchandiser, but it's also very relevant for the finance team. And it's also very relevant for even the C-level or the CFO that wants to double check what is actually happening within your supply chain. And a funny anecdote from my personal life, I would say, my wife is a textile supplier in Taiwan, actually. So she interacts with multiple very large American fashion brands, and she sources these fabrics, just what you say, the yarn, and thinking about, okay, how can you put this together? And when she interacts with her counterpart, which is a merchandiser and fabrics buyer in Hong Kong, they interact in Chinese. They chat to each other over WeChat and in Chinese and make sure that everything is on track. But then they need to recap everything in an email in English, because on that email, all the executives in the US are CC'd so that they know what is actually happening. Mm-hmm. So these folks create an entire workflow, an additional process around the shared visibility over certain email threads, over shared Excels, over, hey, I now need to put this information in the Excel so that not only I know about it, but the rest of the team knows about it. If you can very suddenly and automatically make this data not just available for the individual user, but also to the rest of the company, it has a huge value gain. Yeah. Because the value gain is then not only that you are much more better in control as a C-level, but it also means that you can much faster drive the right strategic decisions that you might not be able to drive if you don't actually know what's going on, at the operation level. And I think that this was at least something when I talked to some senior executives that they got very excited about, where they said, okay, I understand, the cost saving aspect in terms of how much time you can save and, how much you can now improve delivery times and all of that. But actually, for the C-level to suddenly have a real-time view of what is happening within their supply chain without having to now learn to use another system, without somebody on the operation level having to create a report with certain graphs that is then being handed over to a certain meeting, but actually everyone can log into this platform and can see exactly what is going on, no matter whether the C-level sits in UK and we're talking about the sourcing office in China or in Turkey or wherever. Now they have this real-time view. It is actually something that is really, really powerful and very impactful, especially when it comes to strategic decisions.
Yeah, because again, you're talking, and I'm role playing back, as if I'm still in that company, and I'm thinking, okay, so down the line, we've organized this yarn and thread into our inventory, and the applications managers, her team has gone and done the tests on each and every thread to see how they behave through our system. I remember these conversations of the lady at Coates would call or email, how are the samples going? What are the results? Or are we good with this thread and that thread? R&D would kind of start doing their own test without realizing that she's already done the checks. And all this kind of miscommunication, and all can be basically just be logged in. And again, the AI can literally be there just receiving data or having access to all this data. So she logs in the results of all her tests, and literally they can just ask it. So they don't even need to approach her. They would approach her asking, I noticed that this thread did really well, but this one didn't. and let's have a conversation about it. It's not, you're already up to date. Yeah. And now you can actually talk about what does that mean? What does this data mean? Or what do these results mean? What do we do about it? And how do we move forward as a team? So I'm just,
and it is absolutely, and but it's a step-by-step process to really accommodate the user behavior and really make sure that you meet the user where they are today and enable them to then improve their own processes and operation based on the data and technology that's available to them. Yeah. So for instance, what we enable is every data or any data that we have in our platform, you can download it in Excel. You can also ask the AI to produce an automated report for you in any type of language based on the data within our platform we automatically capture. Yeah. Now, is this needed in a world where everyone has access to the data within your company? You might not even need to download the Excel and then send it to your supervisor, to the manager. Yeah. But up until internally the processes actually change and transform to that regard, we still make the data available to you in Excel and in a report, because if this is what you need internally, then you can still stick to this process. And at any given point in time where you realize internally within your processes, actually, we don't need a review of the Excel because I can anyway look into Ameba, log in, and I can see all the data there automatically. Well, then you might actually be able to change your process and create an efficiency gain, and not this whole sunk cost of, oh, we need this pre-SNOP meeting or this pre-production review meeting or whatever you want to call it to go through the Excel, because the data is anywhere available for all the different stakeholders within our platform. But again, I think it's about how long it's going to take users to change their behavior, and also being realistic about how certain processes within companies are just very fundamental and are very, very embedded. And I think that there's a certain arrogance in some technology companies that they come in and say, hey, here's this great tool, use it. But in order to use it, we have a 1-year implementation, and we have to tailor it to your operation. But then you also have to change all these different meetings in order to accommodate our software. And it's more of a philosophical point, but in my view, that's not good technology. Good technology is actually meeting you where you are and starts improving on top of where you are today, and provides an evolutionary aspect to your processes and operation, and also to your own behavior. But that is coming out from your own motivation, as opposed to me coming in and now forcing this onto you in order to make use of that technology.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm starting to realize, really, having started this YouTube channel. So, I've been playing around with AI, working mainly on the image generation stuff, and just kind of understanding what is this Gen AI, and even talking to fashion brands about it in the past, and did a webinar for the footwear industry about it. And so I'm evolving as well. Ultimately, the question that keeps popping up is why, right? So why are you doing something? Why are you using this thing? That's the point of that I'm starting to evolve, is what you just said, is that how do you utilize this in such a way that just benefits you, right? So I use AI tools to write my YouTube script, to brainstorm with, but there's so many tools out there, and I think there's an overload of, look at this AI tool, look at this AI tool. And I think maybe that's part of the skepticism that we meet in the business world, in the industries, is that they're seeing too much. And I think to communicate to a business, it's to find out why for them, if they even need such a tool. And some don't. Some are really, have very little to correct, really. Many do. Most do, I would say. But so I think that's the truth of it, is just figuring out and developing something that is actually practical. And that's why.
And Go, I think it also, it just to intervene here, I think it also goes back to the executives that are thinking about deploying AI solutions. I think it's not to jump on the AI hype train and say, okay, there's pressure by our shareholders, why don't we use AI within our operation? Is actually to go back on the first principles basis and say, okay, what are the actual problems that we have as a company? What is it that we need to improve? And then go and look for tailored solutions with AI, or even also without AI, to think about, okay, is there anything in the market that can actually help us with these pain points that we have realized? As opposed to saying, okay, we need AI, let's start from the top down. What can AI do here, 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 here? And then you realize, okay, actually, some of these things just get even more complicated with AI. I mean, you mentioned image generation. I think it's a little bit similar to the conversation we've had last time, where you can use AI in a design process, but actually it turns out to make the whole production and design process even more complicated. And the question is, what's the gain? What's the net gain, and what's the net benefit? And actually, how much are we going to lose with making things even more complicated that are complicated enough? So I think actually taking a step back as an operator or as an executive and thinking about, okay, there's this inflection point that we see right now in technology where suddenly there's this very, very powerful resource that is available called artificial intelligence or machine learning and even LLMs, so large language models. What is it that we have today? What is our pain point today? And how could we leverage that technology in order to help us with our pain points, and then go out and look for solutions, or in certain areas, maybe even build it for yourself. It's, if there's an AI tool to analyze different yarns and threads, maybe codes should develop an AI on their own. It's not for me to say if there's no other solution in the market, but actually using, always coming back to the actual pain points that you want to solve, and being realistic about how much technology can actually do here, and how much is it actually a people problem, a process problem, a basic operational problem. Because again, AI is also not the solution to everything, right? Like in the end of the day, there's a lot of problems that exist for the company, and AI can do nothing about it. Technology can do nothing about it. And actually it's about upskilling the workforce, or investing money in traditional machinery and expanding production capacity. I don't know, that you need to do.
So in terms of Ameba's platform, how much of it is direct interaction with the AI through the chat window of users acting on, pushing for information? And how much do you see that they're actually using the prompting of the AI, where it automates a lot of tasks and communications on its own? And then also, how are you dealing with hallucinations and making sure that it's the data that it's actually showing and sharing is correct?
Yeah. So how Ameba works as a platform, what you have is you have a dashboard where the AI automatically raises alerts across all your different products, suppliers, POs, purchase orders, and raises an alert whenever a supplier says, oh, this is delayed, or here I cannot ship the right quantity. An alert will be generated. And this alert is you have alerts that are either red alerts or high alerts or medium alerts if there's a production delay, but the production delay doesn't mean that the supplier cannot deliver on time. And then you have updated timelines based on these events that are being generated by AI, and by these alerts that are being generated by AI. So this is all, no interaction needs to happen proactively by the user with the AI. You log into your platform and you have this complete overview, and then you can go through the different alerts to actually action on it on an operation level, which means that maybe you want to call the supplier, maybe you want to ask the AI to have a regular follow-up with the supplier on a weekly cadence, and then the AI will reach out for you through your own email or WhatsApp or WeChat account with the supplier, nudge the supplier to provide more information, updates on the production on the product, and so on. This is the main case that we've seen for, as an initial step, providing structure around this very messy, unstructured procurement process that is happening in most companies. However, as we've built that, we realized there are a lot of investigative insights that cannot display through structure alone, where you as a user actually say, okay, I want to investigate how often is the supplier actually delayed. There's an alert being generated. I need to action the alert, but now I want to do my own analysis of the supplier's performance over the last 6 to 12 months across all my different orders on an SKU level, data level basis. So then you can actually use the AI Copilot that we have in our platform, and you can ask the AI Copilot any question regarding your supply chain, such as asking the AI Copilot, okay, how often has supplier A been delayed in the last 6 months? You can get that data instantly. It's the data that we have in our platform. And then what you can do as a procurement manager, you can call the supplier and be like, hey, you've been delayed, 4 out of 5 times already. You really need to give me a discount on the next order. And suddenly you can use it as a very powerful negotiation tool. And this is data that is currently not really readily available to you, and without the use of Ameba. So this is something where we've seen the split. It's not just about the proactive actioning. It is actually about, first of all, creating structure around data, but then also having the ability to investigate this data with the help of AI. I think there are 2 parts here. Number one, and that's what I've mentioned earlier in our call already, it's around the AI explainability. So not only do we try to build a very robust AI, we actually make the background data available to the user so that the user can proactively investigate where did the AI actually get this insight from, which is basically a double check in the control. If you want to control the AI as a user, we can always refer back to the original data and can actually see, okay, why did the AI now, raise this alert? Which email conversation or email thread or which PDF attachment or which line in which Excel did actually trigger this alert? If you want to investigate that. I think the second thing to say here, and this is something we've been really quite fortunate with. So far, the AI is extremely accurate. And I think the hallucination really comes back to what type of data is it that you're dealing with, right? So if we think about image generation and AI and image generation, there's much more room to hallucinate and think about, creativity. Or if you need to write a prompt and say, I want to generate a picture of Cedrik sitting in a Roman costume in a Colosseum or something like this. And then the AI, has all this creativity and also the ability to hallucinate. When we talk about data and we talk about production dates and SKUs and, red jackets, blue jackets, costs and prices, there's very little room to hallucinate for the AI and suddenly come up with a completely different cost or just invent a different date. So I think here we are quite lucky that the data we're dealing with is not data that prompts the AI to then hallucinate simply because the data is quite fundamental and embedded. And of course, it also comes back down to how much data do you feed into the system in the first place in order to really have this very robust data foundation that then also the AI can enrich on top of.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also the models are getting better and better, right? So, I mean, a year and a half ago, ChatGPT and its competitors were, it was giving some funny results, and every so often we'll make fun, and the social media will make fun at Gemini for not being able to tell us how many R's in a certain word and whatever. But it's improved to the point where they're actually getting much more accurate, some of these models. And also now we have a choice. So I assume that's what you guys do, is you have the choice, and many do this, right? You have the choice of saying, okay, I want you for this function to go to OpenAI, so ChatGPT. On this function, I want you to go to Llama. On this function, go to Anthropic. Even I'm always trying to convince people that it's all a question, like you said, data, and even working with ChatGPT, you can really constrain it. You can say, look, you're working within these bounds and give a command. Do not make anything up. And if you do, tell me. So, it kind of usually, 99% of the times, it actually does so. Every so often I have to remind it, say, you forgot something, didn't you? And it's like, oh yeah, it actually checks itself and says, you're right. I didn't tell you where I got this information from. So
and this core is why it's actually so complicated to build the software that we're building, and why I'm really, really grateful that we have received so much venture funding and so much support from our investors and are building up a team that is now scaling up to 20 employees, because it does take a lot of engineering resources. And I was sitting in an investor conversation with a VC, and the VC, the venture capital company, was asking me, oh, can I not just ask ChatGPT about my supply chain? And I said, no, because how should ChatGPT know about your data? And, importantly enough, it's not just the LLM in the background, but it's actually what are all the different things that you do, all the different steps, how you process this data before you anonymously send it to the LLM to then return a value back, and what happens afterwards with that data. So it's then being also displayed in the right context. So it's not just being a wrapper around ChatGPT, and now you can ask ChatGPT any question about your supply chain. You actually need to have a very, very complex and complicated product in place to then make use out of these LLMs that are flying around, and some really, really strong LLMs, and every LLM spikes in a different direction. And where we can then make the assessment to say, okay, which LLM is best for which feature, also which LLM, can we plug and play in the future depending on one taking over the other.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, it still needs a lot of engineering work around the LLM in order to then surface data in the right structure, being able to investigate this data with sensical and not nonsensical outputs. And basically doing the prompting that you just mentioned that you do by yourself when you ask ChatGPT, but based on your data and automatically in the background through the entire software kit that we were building. And this is a very, very complicated software to build. And so it's very, very exciting in that regard as well.
Yeah. So I'm working with another AI service or tool provider, but more in the image generation. So they've developed a tool for fashion. We are talking to brands, and that was the same question that we got. Wait a minute, why don't I just wait for OpenAI to develop a tool one day, or Adobe maybe one day will just create this tool, and even ask, why doesn't Adobe just do this for us? So I kind of jumped in and I said, well, let me just kind of dispel this notion that these big generic companies will be able to create something so specific to your industry and needs. They're just not going to do that, right? They have a clear business model, which is building these models that you, Amebas of this world, will come in and connect to it and license in a way their technology to build your technology alongside it, so API work. And I said to him, you're not going to find a more tailored solution than the one we're talking about here, because here's a company specifically dealing with this problem. It's kind of a weird question maybe, but how does the average person listen to this conversation and say, well, what does this do for me? Like, is there any answer?
There's a great answer to it, and there's an answer that comes out of my personal life as well. Just the other day, there was a big summer sale for an Italian jeanswear brand that I really much like, and extremely excited, and bought 2 or 3 jeans models here and one jacket there, and I got super excited about it. And the next day, I received this email that both of these items are out of stock. And it's a small thing. I mean, they're much more significant problems in this world than me getting frustrated that I cannot buy that jeans. But it was a very disappointing experience for me as a consumer to say, okay, I planned with having that product, and I think having the right products in stock is actually, and having a good customer experience is actually really fundamental to the success of a brand, especially in the day and age that we're living in right now, where I can immediately go to Instagram, I can immediately go to any social media network and be like, XYZ brand, why can this happen? And share it with my network and really damage the brand's reputation.
Yeah.
And this is again, it's a benefit of actually having the predictability where you can go into store and the products that you were looking for, you actually find them and you have accuracy, and there's not any delay or stock outs, and you go in and these goods don't exist. But then also on the flip side, it is something, again, thinking about the hidden cost that you've mentioned earlier that I've talked with a lot of brands about, where I say, look, being out of stock doesn't only mean that you lose money because you cannot sell this one product, this one unit of a product. It actually means that you're not only losing out on the single unit, on the single sale, but you're really losing out on the customer experience and the brand loyalty. And I think there's a whole huge notion, how much does the operation supply chain actually enable the growth of the company, and effectively it's about how do you get the products that consumers want at the right place and time and at the right quality, and doing this as fast as possible and as continuous as possible, so that people are very happy and can actually buy what they want. And I think that this is then from a consumer angle something that you hopefully with the companies that use Ameba do not have to experience, and that you have much more certainty that when I buy my two jeans models, they are actually in stock, and I will be really happy, and I will buy even more from that brand, as opposed to getting frustrated and say, oh my god, this was such a unpleasant experience, and very disappointing, actually having an order confirmed and then later on getting the email that it's actually doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, for sure. But what is the kind of future of artificial intelligence in the foreseeable future? Let's not go into science fiction mode. Is there anything that you're thinking is going to really change things, or is it more just like we're at the point where we just can now implement what we've got and really make things more efficient and easier and more fun?
I think to start off, about the technology in terms of LLMs developing, it's really hard to tell. There's certainly economies of scale or diseconomies of scale where you keep investing and pouring more money, but then the incremental increase of how much better the LLM gets is just diminishing. And I think how long we're going to keep doing that, and at which point we have a sudden explosion and the AGI comes around, I think nobody really knows that, and it's a much more philosophical question. On the more broader tech side that I'm really excited about, you actually brought up PLMs and other systems that have existed for many, many years in the market that are not really able to capture data in the way that we can capture that data. Why we can do that is because we're an AI-first solution. And because of the AI, we are constructing software and architecting software in a very, very creative and different way than it had to be created in the past, in very different layers than how software needed to be built in the past. And thereby I think there will be many more solutions, but actually on the B2B side and really thinking about how does AI, thinking about your former colleague, will actually, how does AI and these technologies will then actually completely transform how we do our jobs. I don't believe that there is a huge amount of jobs that will just disappear. What I believe is that a lot of jobs will change, and actually will change for the positive, where people can really focus on the things where they can add a lot of value and create a lot of value, at least with our tool in the operation side. And you can think about, I think you said Mike is his name.
Yeah.
Where Mike, first of all, gets less stressed, but also again, where he can, not spend 25% of his time on the Excel sheet and updating it, but now he can actually do something within the company that creates much more value. And this is, it's going to help the operation to improve, whether it's continuous improvement, strategic planning, whatever it might be. Over time, what we will see, technology is going to inform how we interact with that technology and what we do with it. And then there's a continuous cycle of, the new behaviors, again, then also changing the technology and so forth. So I think there's the LLM part, and then there's the other part where we fall in is, what do these companies actually do with those LLMs and the improvement in the LLMs, and how as companies and businesses and even individuals are we using these technologies and, changing our own behavior and create things. And yeah. I'm extremely excited about this because, Gor, I mean, you're on your own creating this fantastic podcast and YouTube channel, and you use all these different AI tools. If you think back 5 years ago, it probably maybe would not have been possible to do on your own. And now you can actually do it on your own. And which means that suddenly all these new technologies are an enabler for you to really follow your creative passion and create something that previously, the burden and the limit to create this would have been so high, also with the upfront investment that you would have needed on the technology side, or creating the systems, or somebody who cuts all these videos for you. Now you can actually do this, and I think this is really the amazing thing that we are going to see much more across many more different industries.
Yeah, and then there's an added benefit that, let's take again Mike as an example. I mean, if you were to come to his manager, our VP of operations at the time, another good friend of mine, if you had said to her, if you implement this tool, Mike gets to leave the office at 5 p.m. every day and he goes home early. And she, being a smart VP, she would have said, really? Just for that, I'm interested. Because she's that type of person. She's that type of VP. She cares about her well-being of her employees. or the people underneath her. If you had told her that all her staff wouldn't be working late, I think that's a huge benefit if you bring that to a company.
I think it's a huge benefit for the company and a huge benefit for Mike. And I think even more shockingly, the case of Mike that I'm seeing with a lot of folks that I'm speaking with is not that they sit there in the evening to clean up the Excel, but they sit there also on a Saturday and on a Sunday. And you have people and folks that work really, really hard, and then suddenly they actually, need to leave their children's football game or the family dinner to then go back to the computer to type in some random numbers in an Excel. And I think that it's a super good point where it's this frustration that I've seen, and frankly that I've lived in my own life. Again, I'm coming from this industry. I've seen this firsthand, right? It's really sad that if you have such a big passion for an area and for a job and for the responsibility that you have, that this then gets undermined by very tedious tasks that are necessary, but they shouldn't be necessary. And I think that ideally we can work towards that, where Mike can get home at 5 and see his family, and hopefully also doesn't need to open up his laptop on Saturday or Sunday. So yeah.
Cool. So once again, like my previous conversations, we could go on and on and on. Like, it's really exciting what you guys are doing. And I assume your organization is like you, very positive. So it's exciting to see a company like with your kind of vision and how you see things and your experience. I'm sure your colleagues are the same. And if there's anything you would like to add in terms of how people can find you, how people can find Ameba, just let the audience know.
No, thank you so much. I mean, this has been such a pleasure, and first of all, thank you so much for providing this forum and also having the keen interest and going out to explore and meeting folks like ourselves and really trying to bridge this gap between these new technologies and the actual industry and actual users. I think that this is an incredibly helpful job, and I think for everyone or anyone watching, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn ending is Ameba Systems, or over our website. It's ameba.ai, ameba.ai, or just email me directly, Cedrik, my name, at ameba.ai. And I think we're super open-minded and always grateful for having any type of conversations, whether it's with a potential customer or just somebody who wants to give us feedback, or somebody who's just interested to learn about our mission and what we're doing. And the last thing to mention here, I really, really like what you're saying here. This is obviously not a one-man effort, and I'm so incredibly excited to suddenly have really some of the smartest engineers in the world that graduated from MIT, worked at Palantir, worked at Meta, worked at Snapchat, all those really, really incredible firms, to get excited about the physical goods around us and actually fixing the problem that on the surface sounds very mundane, but once you dive deeper is actually something that concerns all of us. So it's an incredible team, and I'm very grateful that we are all on this journey.
Yeah, sounds fun, exciting. I'll obviously put in the descriptions the links of yours. We'll look forward to how cool Ameba is. Is like all these different companies using the platforms. And I'll pay attention to how far you're going with it as well. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining my channel, my small little channel that's growing slowly. And
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, take care. So thanks, Cedrik, for that very interesting conversation. If you like this video and you like the conversation, so hit the like button and do subscribe to my channel to hear more such conversations and also tips and tricks of how to use artificial intelligence. And do comment on the comment section if you have tips of your own or you have questions and thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for listening, and see you next time.